Hey there, everybody. Today we're diving into the world of AI and specifically how these systems are being trained to think more like us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and the specific thing we're looking at today is this new technique called chain of draft. Have you heard of that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah. So for the listeners out there who aren't familiar with it, can you give us a little bit of a rundown of what this chain of draft thing is all about?
Yeah, so you've probably heard about those impressive large language models, those AI systems that can answer complex questions.
So what, like ChatGPT?
Exactly like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But sometimes they take forever to get to the point. They'll, churn out paragraphs of explanation when a simple sentence would do.
Right. They're a little long-winded sometimes.
Exactly. And so Chain of Draft is all about making AI more efficient, and it's actually inspired by how humans think, when you're working through a problem.
Yeah.
You jot down key points. You don't write out every single detail.
Totally. Yeah.
And so Chain of Draft is about training AI to do the same thing.
Okay, so instead of giving us like a novel, the AI is going to go straight to the point.
That's the idea. Yeah.
But how does that actually work? I mean, does it mean the AI just gives shorter answers?
Not quite. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. Think of it this way. Imagine you're solving a math problem.
Okay.
You wouldn't write out every single calculation in your head, would you?
No.
You'd probably skip some steps and, intuitively how to get to the answer.
Yeah, especially if it's one I've done like a bunch of times before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of what's interesting about Chain of Draft. It seems to allow the AI to make similar leaps in logic, focusing on the essential information without getting bogged down in the details.
So the AI is learning to cut to the chase, basically.
Exactly.
So to really understand how this works,
Yeah.
we're looking at this new research today that compares chain of draft to a couple of other prompting methods. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, they looked at what's called standard prompting, which is just asking the AI a question directly, and then chain of thought prompting, which is kind of like having the AI show its work step by step.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So standard prompting would be like asking for directions, and chain of thought would be like getting a map with like every landmark on the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A very detailed map.
Okay, so where does this chain of draft fit in with all of that?
Chain of draft is like getting directions, but only with the key turns and landmarks, It still provides those intermediate steps, but in a super concise way, just a few words or phrases for each one.
So it's still giving you guidance, but in a more efficient way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm already starting to see the appeal here.
Yeah.
But did this research actually show that this works? Like, does it actually improve the AI's performance?
That's what's so fascinating. They tested it on a whole range of tasks, from solving math problems to, understanding common sense concepts. And what they found is that chain of draft either matched or even beat chain of thought in terms of accuracy.
Hold on. So it's just as accurate, but with way fewer steps.
Yeah.
That seems like a win-win.
It really does seem that way.
But was it actually faster and cheaper to run these AI systems using chain of draft? Because that's a big deal in the real world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the most exciting aspects of this research. They found that chain of draft used significantly fewer tokens, which is basically a measure of, the computational resources required to process the language.
Okay, so fewer tokens means less processing power and ultimately lower cost.
Exactly. Yeah, and that could have, huge implications for making AI more accessible, to a wider range of users.
Of course, not everybody has access to a supercomputer, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so this could be a big deal for like smaller companies, researchers, individuals who want to use AI.
Yeah, definitely.
But you mentioned earlier that there were some limitations to this chain of draft.
Right.
What were those drafts?
Well, one thing they found is that chain of draft doesn't perform as well when it's not given any examples to learn from. It's like giving the AI a bit of a head start.
Okay.
Without those examples, it doesn't perform quite as well.
So it's not quite ready to fly solo just yet.
Not entirely.
Okay.
But there are ways to address this limitation, which we'll talk about in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. Can't wait to hear what else you've uncovered. Welcome back, everybody. So we're in the middle of exploring this super efficient AI technique called chain of draft. And so far, it's sounded pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But I want to hear more about the actual research. Like, what kind of tasks did they use to actually test this thing out?
Yeah, they covered a lot of ground. They really wanted to see, how will it perform compared to those other prompting methods we talked about?
Right, the standard prompting and chain of thought.
Exactly.
Okay, so they basically threw some challenges at the AI and saw how it handled them.
Right.
What was the first test?
Well, one of the key tests was this massive set of math problems called GSM-8K. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
Okay, so it's basically a collection of thousands of grade school level math word problems.
Okay.
And it's become kind of a benchmark for evaluating, how well AI systems can reason.
So like if John has 3 apples and Mary has 2 kind of problems.
Exactly. But they can get pretty tricky. They require multiple steps and logical reasoning. It's not just about simple arithmetic.
Got it. So how did Chain of Draft do on these math problems? Was it able to keep up with the other methods?
It did more than just keep up. It actually excelled. They tested it using 2 different large language models, GPT-4 and Claude 3.5 Sonnet.
Wait, those are some of the most advanced AI systems out there, right?
They are.
Wow. And so using Chain of Draft, both of these models achieve accuracy rates of over 90% on GSM-8K.
That's right. Yeah, pretty impressive.
Wow, 90%. That's like getting an A on a really tough math test.
Yeah.
But how did it compare to Chain of Thought? Because I thought that was supposed to be like the gold standard for this kind of reasoning.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Chain of Thought got similar accuracy rates, but it used way more computational resources to get there.
Oh, so both methods were smart, but Chain of Draft was way more efficient.
Exactly. And remember those tokens we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Chain of Draft used a fraction of the tokens that Chain of Thought required. So it's like the AI was able to find shortcuts, skip over unnecessary calculations and still arrive at the right answer.
I'm starting to see why you're so excited about this.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting the right answer. It's about getting there in the most elegant and efficient way possible.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of beautiful when you think about it.
Yeah. Okay, so math problems. What other challenges did they test out?
Okay, well, they also looked at how well Chain of Draft could handle, common sense reasoning tasks.
Okay.
They used 2 benchmarks called data understanding and sports understanding.
Okay, so more like real-world scenarios.
Exactly, yeah. More like things that you and I would have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, what kind of questions would the AI have to answer?
So, for example, in the date understanding task, the AI might be asked to figure out, if a given date is valid or to calculate the difference between 2 dates.
So like is February 30th a real date, or how many days are there between January 1st and July 4th?
Exactly. Those are great examples, yeah.
It's amazing to think that AI can even understand these kinds of concepts because they seem so uniquely human.
I know, it is right. And once again, Chain of Draft proved to be incredibly effective. It consistently matched or even outperformed Chain of Thought on these tasks while still using, significantly fewer tokens.
So it's not just a one-trick pony. It can handle math. It can handle common sense reasoning. Is there anything this thing can't do?
Well, we'll talk about some of the limitations in a bit. But first, there's one more set of tasks we should cover, what are called symbolic reasoning.
Symbolic reasoning, that sounds intense.
It is a little bit intense, yeah. So for this one, they used a coin flip task. Imagine you're given a series of instructions describing a coin being flipped. You have to keep track of the state of the coin, heads or tails, as it's flipped multiple times.
Okay, I think I could handle that.
Right, and so the AI has to figure out the final state of the coin after all the flips. And it really requires, logical thinking and the ability to follow a sequence of steps.
Okay, so is Chain of Draft up to the challenge?
It is, and interestingly, both Chain of Draft and Chain of Thought performed flawlessly on this task. They achieved 100% accuracy.
Oh, wow. Okay, so in this case, both methods were equally effective.
Yes, but there's a key difference. Again, Chain of Draft used far fewer tokens to get to that perfect score. We're talking like a 68% reduction in tokens for GPT-4 and a whopping 86% reduction for Claude 3.5 Sonnet.
Wow, those are some serious savings.
Yeah. It is.
It really highlights the power of this concise draft-like approach.
Right.
The AI is essentially thinking smarter, not harder.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, but this also raises a really interesting question. If an AI can achieve the same results with way fewer steps, does that mean our traditional notions of step-by-step reasoning are outdated? Is there something more to intelligence than just meticulously working through every detail?
That's a profound question and one that researchers are still grappling with. It's possible that, just like humans, AI can develop more intuitive or abstract ways of thinking that don't necessarily require laying out every single step.
So maybe we've been thinking about AI all wrong. Instead of trying to make it think like a computer, maybe we should be encouraging it to think more like a human.
It's an intriguing possibility, isn't it?
It is.
And Chain of Draft seems to be pointing us in that direction.
Yeah, this is also fascinating, but we haven't talked about those limitations yet.
Right.
You mentioned there were a few things holding Chain of Draft back.
Yeah.
What are they?
Well, as with any new approach, there are some hurdles to overcome.
Yeah.
And one of the key limitations is that chain of draft doesn't perform as well when it's not given any examples to learn from. It seems to need a bit of guidance to get started.
So it's not quite ready to fly solo just yet.
Not entirely, but there are ways to address this limitation, which we'll discuss in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll also explore the other limitations of chain of draft and, what they might mean for the future of AI.
Sounds good. Can't wait to hear what else you've uncovered. Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. We've been talking about this new AI technique called chain of draft, which is all about making AI think more efficiently.
That's right.
Yeah, by focusing on essential information.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, drafting a concise outline before you write a full-blown essay.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, and we've seen how well it works on different tasks, like from math problems to common sense reasoning.
Right.
It even beats that, more long-winded chain of thought method in some cases.
Yeah, in some cases, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, but like you said, there are some limitations to this chain of draft.
Right.
You mentioned that it needs a little help to get started.
Yeah.
It's not quite ready to just be, thrown into the deep end without some guidance.
Exactly. So one of the key findings was that chain of draft works best when the AI is given a few examples to learn from.
Oh, okay.
It's like, showing the AI a few sample problems and solutions so it gets a feel for how to approach things concisely.
So you're giving it training wheels before you let it ride on its own.
Exactly.
Okay.
And without those examples, in what researchers call a zero-shot setting, the performance drops significantly.
Oh.
So it seems like the AI needs that initial nudge to understand what we're asking for.
That makes sense. It's like trying to learn a new game without anyone explaining the rules to you.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, you might figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
But it would take a lot longer.
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't be as good at it.
So not a total deal breaker, though.
Not at all. The good news is that this limitation isn't a deal breaker. Researchers are already exploring ways to overcome this, such as developing, new training data sets that specifically focus on concise reasoning,
right,
or, fine-tuning existing AI models to better adapt to this type of prompting.
Okay, so that's encouraging.
Yeah.
It sounds like it has a lot of potential, even with this limitation.
Yeah, definitely.
But there was another one, wasn't there?
Right.
Something about it working better on those bigger AI models.
Yeah, that's right. Another interesting finding is that they tested chain of draft on both larger and smaller language models.
Okay.
And the improvements were much more dramatic on the larger models.
So does that mean it's only useful for like those big tech companies, that have those massive computing resources?
Well,
what about the rest of us who don't have access to a supercomputer?
that's a really good question. And it's important to remember that AI research is constantly evolving, you know. So while it's true that chain of draft showed the biggest gains on those larger models, it still provided some benefits for the smaller models as well.
So there's hope for us regular folks.
Absolutely. And as we develop new techniques and training data sets, we might find ways to make chain of draft even more effective for smaller, more accessible AI models.
Yeah.
It's all about pushing the boundaries and seeing how far we can go.
I like that. So even though there are these limitations, it sounds like this chain of draft could still have like a huge impact on the future of AI.
I think so. And it's not just about the practical benefits, like efficiency and cost savings.
Right.
It also raises some really interesting questions about the nature of intelligence itself.
Okay.
If an AI can achieve the same level of accuracy with far fewer steps.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about how we define intelligence?
Right.
Do we need those long, elaborate explanations to really understand something? Or can we, chain of draft, cut to the chase and focus on those essential insights?
Wow. Those are some big questions. It's like this chain of draft is challenging all of our assumptions about how we think.
It really is. It's making us rethink, what it means to be intelligent and how we can train AI to be not just smart, but also, efficient and insightful.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
We've learned how chain of draft is pushing the boundaries of AI, making it more efficient and potentially even more human-like in its thinking.
Right.
It seems like this is really just the beginning of a very exciting journey.
Absolutely. As we continue to explore the possibilities of chain of draft and other AI techniques, who knows what amazing breakthroughs are waiting for us out there.
That's something to ponder, isn't it? It feels like we're on the edge of like a whole new era of AI.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing.